And we are learning more about how President Trump's legal team and Attorney General William Barr worked to bring the special counsel's investigation to an end. One America's Jack Posobiec explains from Washington.
Now, you recently published a new theory about why AG Barr was chosen and sort of the series of events that led to him becoming Attorney General. I wanted you to break that down for us.
We know in early 2018, Mueller and Weissmann were at an impasse with Trump's lawyers about the pivot to obstruction of justice away from collusion. There was a bunch of news reports about that anger between those teams.
So the investigation changes from collusion, which they know is not true, and then some point in early 2018, it turns into obstruction, which is a much more abstract kind of concept.
In June 2018, now Attorney General Barr wrote a letter to Rod Rosenstein objecting to a particular interpretation of an obstruction statute that he said Mueller and Weissmann were adhering to. This was strange because there was no reason to assume he would know in private practice what Mueller and Weissmann were up to. And then we know that the day after the midterms, Jeff Sessions was asked to resign, and then Bill Barr was floated as the only name to become Attorney General and was quickly confirmed thereafter. So my thesis is pretty simple, that because of the impasse that Trump's lawyers were at with Mueller and Weissmann, they tried to go over their head to Rosenstein to convince Rosenstein that the obstruction theory that Mueller and Weissmann were using was legally unsound.
And what they were saying was that the president's statements constituted obstruction, his tweets constituted obstruction. Every time he complained about the investigation, that constituted obstruction.
Right. Or, for example, his firing of James Comey, which is a core Article 2 power, the right to fire your subordinate as the president. So the fact that that could be conceived as a crime infringes on the separation of powers. And that's the theory Trump's lawyers were trying to push, but they couldn't get anywhere to convince Mueller to stop pursuing this line of investigation. So they went to, my theory is, they went to Bill Barr and said, Bill, you're a former AG, you have credibility with Rod Rosenstein. Why don't you write a letter to Rosenstein to get him, to persuade him that the Mueller-Weissmann theory is wrong? And so that's why I think this June 2018 letter exists, with Bill Barr writing a letter to Rod Rosenstein saying that this obstruction theory is wrong.
And that's the theory that we later find out just last week with the release of the Mueller report. Essentially, we then see the Mueller-Weissmann theory on obstruction outlined in the report. However, of course, because now Bill Barr has become Attorney General, we know that he disagrees with it.
Exactly. And that's really the big piece of new information that came out of the Mueller report. What we found out was the legal reasoning why Mueller thought he could go forward with obstruction. And we see that Bill Barr and Mueller were having a direct argument, which leads me to think that back in June 2018, Bill Barr had inside information about what Mueller and Weissmann's theory of obstruction was.
Now, we've also heard AG Barr's comments to the Senate, specifically on the subject of spying that went on during the Trump campaign. And that's the word that he used. What is your indication of his level of interest in investigating whether or not spying took place on the campaign?
I think he's going to pursue a thorough investigation.
Is his interest really restoring the rule of law and credibility to the department?
I think that's right. I think he looked at what the department was doing over the past 2 years and was upset in the way that many Republicans are upset by this selective prosecution bias and extending bizarre legal theories to try and trap the president and remove him.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.